Fermi's paradox. In essence, it describes the strangeness of having no evidence of extraterrestrial life, despite its high probability given the vastness of the universe with its infinite suns, each orbited by planets. Why haven't we encountered any signs of life? No radio signals, no transmissions, no visitors. Existence is too vast for us to be alone. So, where is everyone? I wish we had never answered that question. The first person to make contact with extraterrestrial life was Calvin Myers. Born blind, Calvin was the first patient to receive prosthetic eyes, a medical marvel. But the moment his new eyes opened, Calvin began to scream. He was sedated, and it took hours before he was calm enough to tell the doctors what happened. It turned out Calvin had seen demons. More accurately, legions of demons. Monsters, grotesque, jagged creatures crammed into the corners of his room. He saw distorted reflections flicker across mirrors, shadows ripple, and malevolent faces stare down from the ceiling. Calvin clawed the plastic eyes from his sockets. "Darkness is still better," he told the doctors. A full report was sent to Agency X. There was no serious discussion about stopping the project. Too much money had been invested, market targets had been set, and management had its expectations. So more devices were produced, distributed, and tested. And each time, the results were the same. The moment the test subjects opened their new eyes, they witnessed a world teeming with horrors. I will never forget what I saw when the doctors removed my bandages. Eyes stared back at me, enormous, the size of truck tires, blue and bloody, embedded directly into my wall. I could feel that these eyes recognized me. Worse, they hated me. The room was filled with other abominations: a furry demon with the face of a child, a woman made of thorns and red light, a pile of writhing limbs, each gnarled hand slowly opening and closing. I screamed until my throat was raw, until I passed out. When I woke up, the first thing I did was try to claw out my eyes, but the doctors had learned their lesson from Calvin. I was tied down, monitored, forced to look. Each day was a parade of nightmares. Shadows melted and spread like ink blots on the ceiling, dripping onto my chest. I couldn't feel them fall, but I saw them coalesce into menacing faces, staring at my luxurious new eyes. Things were worse at night. I pleaded with the doctors to leave the lights on. If I had to see the monsters, at least I wanted to see them coming. But my pleas were denied. Horrific shapes danced down the hallway outside my room. Something crawled onto my bed, breathing heavily, then leaped out the window. The doctors recorded all my babbling. They injected experimental drugs but didn't believe my words. Occasionally, I heard screams echoing from the end of the corridor. When my door opened, I knew I wasn't the only one in the hospital with new eyes. Others could see too. After almost a month, they finally released me. I had lied to them the week before, claiming I no longer saw the creatures, so I was free, given medication and a diary. "Call us if you see anything unusual," they told me. They had no idea. On the bus ride home, I saw 3 men with goat heads and bulging bellies as tall as maple trees sprinting along the highway. A putrid whale hovered above us, its white intestines spilling out like spoiled milk. It consumed the clouds it passed through, and in the sunlight, I could see inside its every bone and vein. I thought about clawing out my eyes again, tearing them from my skull like jelly from a jar, but I was afraid. Not just of the pain, but that the creatures would still be out there. Not seeing them, but knowing they were watching me, would be even worse. You haven't heard about the eyes, I'm sure of it. Agency X won't let the information get out until they're ready. I'm breaking every confidentiality agreement in the world by posting my story online. But you need to know. Because now that some of us have seen these invisible monsters in plain sight, they've become bolder. I feel them now at night. They brush against my neck or slap me, some nibble, probing. It's only a matter of time before they fully reveal themselves. I'm not sure what we can do to protect ourselves, or if we even can, but knowing is the first step. Believing. So believe me when I tell you, wherever you're reading this, if you think you're alone, you never are. You can't see them, but they are very aware of you. Hold steady, don't tremble, try not to panic. I've spent every night sleeping in the bathtub with all the lights in the house on. Fear paralyses me, like a chain around my neck, keeping me from leaving my home. But I'm tired of being afraid, of being alone. You might not have my eyes, but I think you can see them if you look closely. Focus. Use your peripheral vision. Pay careful attention to mirrors, watch for movement. Maybe you'll see something, or maybe something will appear if it thinks you're looking. As I said, they're becoming bolder. Someone is following me every time I leave my apartment. My new eyes are sensitive to small details. I always see the same car slowly circling my neighborhood every day. It always follows me, a few cars behind. I've also noticed other things tracking me, faces in reflections, enormous silhouettes in the clouds. Sometimes, on the bus, I recognize a face on the street whose features are all out of order. I don't go out at night anymore. Some of you had questions after my last update. I'll try to answer them. If you're wondering why I mentioned Fermi's paradox, I was actually just sharing a theory from a friend. There's a whole group of us online who were Agency X's guinea pigs with our sparkling new eyes and fresh nightmares. I don't know their real names, only their handles: Ribbon and Violet, Calico and Cheshire, Dublin and Borrow, and Matilda. There are many others, but those are the 7 I chat with most often, almost every day. We share what we see, encourage each other after sleepless nights, and most of all, we speculate together. If you're wondering what my name is, you'll have to keep wondering. You can call me Walt if that helps. Cheshire was the one who brought up Fermi's paradox. They believe the horrors we see are aliens in disguise from a galaxy or two away, and our artificial eyes can see through their camouflage. Matilda has a different theory. The creatures we're observing are from another dimension, and that dimension is bleeding into ours. Are these entities hostile, friendly, or indifferent? Barrow's question popped up in the chat room one rainy afternoon. That day, I was struggling with a hangover, as I was most days since the surgery. Rain drizzled outside my bedroom window. 3 months had passed, and my life was suspended in uncertainty. I had quit my job, too afraid of what I might see if I looked too closely at my coworkers. Agency X provided me with a stipend for my services, enough to get by temporarily, but it was quickly running out. Barrow's question echoed in my head like a trapped bat in an attic. Before I could answer, I saw Violet typing. They seem hostile. A few days ago, I was out grocery shopping. I was almost at the checkout when I noticed an old woman standing in the produce section. Blood streamed from her eyes, nose, and mouth, probably even her pores. I stood frozen, unable to move. She noticed me and began to make soft cooing sounds as if trying to lure me closer. I dropped everything and ran out of the store. They seem hostile, but do we know for sure? I wondered. There was a knock at the door, a pause, then a scratch. I tried to ignore it. Now that I could see the creatures, there was a connection. I heard them all the time, soft laughs or sighs. Sometimes I even felt them. A creature that seemed to be made entirely of mist and teeth had even taken a small bite out of my shoulder. I'd call that a hostile act, though perhaps it was just hungry or curious. The scratching turned into banging, then silence. Matilda was typing. I think they might be like us, some good, some bad, others are just ugly. Dublin interjected, communicating entirely through emojis, adding a smiling face to the conversation, followed by LOLs and pop culture references as usual. The smoker has blunt teeth, Ribbon posted, but his tongue is sharp as a razor. Are you okay, Walt? No, not at all. I saw the girl in the mirror, or the mirror in the girl, something horrible, Ribbon. Are you okay? Barrow asked. We often asked each other that, are you okay? A polite way of asking if the small mental cracks we all felt were starting to fracture open. Ribbon was typing again. They said you're next, after me, Walt. My stomach dropped to the floor. My apartment was hot, but I started to shiver. Ribbon left the chat. It took the others 10 minutes to convince me that everything was fine, that Ribbon was just overstimulated. I lied, saying I wasn't worried. Are you okay, Walt? Matilda messaged me privately. Hold steady and contact me whenever you need to talk. Thanks, I said. I logged off and closed my laptop. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, tapping against the window as if a visitor was demanding entry. The TV was softly humming on the wall. I glanced up and saw it was an old show I'd watched dozens of times, only this time I saw that the comedian had a second mouth on their neck. Their head bobbed up and down each time they told a joke. That was the closest I'd come to clawing my eyes from their sockets. My fingers stopped as I pressed down on my eyelids. Damn it, damn it, damn it, I said. There was nothing left to do. I turned off the TV, took a bath, and didn't leave my apartment for the rest of the week. A new message. I was lying on the sofa, wearing the flannel pajamas I'd lived in for the past 2 days, when I received a notification on my phone. My apartment, which was never in danger of being mistaken for a palace, was now a mess of pizza boxes and empty beer cans. I had rigged makeshift alarms on the doors and windows by tying together some of the noisiest bottles and jars I could find. The alert was an email from Cheshire. It wasn't the first time they'd sent me one, but it always made me nervous. I'd once asked where they found my email address but received no reply. Usually, Cheshire would send me strange photos: a house, a hospital, a tree with light emanating around it. This message was different. For the first time, Cheshire used words. "Are you there, Walt? I need your help. They found me. Can you call me? Call as soon as you can, but don't use your personal phone." The email ended with a phone number. I stared at the screen for a long time. The screen glowed brightly in my dark living room. The blinds were drawn, and my sense of time was becoming shaky, but I knew it was past midnight. For a moment, I thought about deleting the email, closing my laptop, and throwing it out the window. I didn't want to be involved. But Cheshire seemed desperate, and after all, our strange little group was the closest thing to family. I had left a bunch of experimental guinea pigs with mechanical eyes that could see monsters. Maybe we were friends. We were asterisk something, even if we only existed online. Don't use your personal phone. Just a few blocks away was a gas station, and Baltimore's last public phone booth, perhaps the last in the world, realistically speaking. Surely there were others, but it was the only one I knew of was just a block away. At night, every instinct in me wanted to wait until morning, but Cheshire said they needed my help immediately. A small part of my primitive mind warned, what if it's a trap? "That's paranoia," I said aloud, getting up and finding some street clothes that were almost clean. Cheshire was a friend or close to it. Besides, apart from the biting mist and the tall, skinny shadow that had slapped me, no creature had truly tried to harm me. Maybe they weren't hostile. I chugged a Red Bull from my Uber Eats order before opening the main door. The hallway outside was dark, with no sign of movement or life. I approached the elevator, hesitated, then chose the stairs to go down to the street. Baltimore was still awake, but filled with a restless hum. The city never truly shut down. There were always car lights, garbage. It wasn't beautiful, not always. But after years plunged into darkness when I was sick, being able to see that beautiful mess again always gave me goosebumps. I looked at the skyline, trying to memorize the rhythm of the tall buildings casting shadows against the cloudy night sky. "It's okay," I told myself, taking a breath of smoke-laced air. "It's okay." Every shadow under the streetlights made me jump. Every distant car horn startled me. But I kept going, my sneakers chewing up the pavement, bringing me closer to the gas station, to the phone booth, to a friend. "Got a light?" I nearly peed my pants. I let out a yell and spun around to see a man leaning against a nearby wall just outside the street lamp's glow. His face was obscured by a cloud of smoke. His voice was raspy, like a lifelong chain smoker, perhaps the heavy Marlboro type. I don't smoke," I stammered. "Too bad," the man grumbled, stepping into the light. As he did, his limbs and neck elongated, becoming thin as razor wire. His body twisted, cracked, and boiled, then collapsed in on itself as he stepped out of the light. Now he was close. He smelled of tobacco and gunpowder. I couldn't see his face, only the cloud of smoke. It moved with him like a veil. "Those eyes don't belong to you," he said. "Give them to me." I ran. Other figures began to emerge from the darkness. I tried to stay in the light as much as possible, running from one street lamp to another. An enormous shadow, with a swollen body and countless thin legs, scrambled up the side of a skyscraper. As I ran past a storefront, I saw the face of a beautiful, furious woman reflected back at me. Her eyes glowed, and I realized they were mirrors, catching and reflecting the light. She screamed, and the glass shattered. But I was already halfway down the block. I burst into my apartment like a whirlwind. Once the door was locked, I slid to the floor, trembling. The adrenaline shock made me nauseous. I threw up what little was left in my stomach after pizza and rum. It wasn't until dawn burned brightly behind the blinds that I slowly regained my senses. Another new message. I had left my phone on the table when I went out to the gas station. A new alert flashed on the screen, numbing me like a phantom limb. I opened my laptop and saw a new email from Cheshire. "We regret to inform you that you are being hunted." The sentence ended with a winking face emoji. I was trapped in my apartment. Every night was the same: knocking, scratching, screaming, and a silence so profound it was unnatural in a city. Some evenings, I saw smoke leaking into the living room from under the main door, but I never saw fire. I had to cover all the mirrors because the faces in them were becoming clearer. "Anyone there?" I typed, huddled in my empty bathtub with my laptop. It had been almost a week since my failed trip to the gas station. A week since Cheshire's warning or threat that I was being hunted. Every day, a member of our chat group, which I started calling the Blindside Blues, disappeared without returning. First Ribbon, then Barrow, next Dublin, Violet, and finally Calico. Now it was just me, Matilda, and Cheshire. Cheshire's response was no help. Matilda's private message arrived 10 minutes later. I know you're in Baltimore. Can we meet? Something was scratching at the bathtub drain. I leaned down, then recoiled from the tub when I saw a blue eye with dozens of pupils looking through the hole. If my bathroom was compromised, I had no good options left. I decided it was best to die comfortably, so I curled up in bed with a soft blanket and a glass of dark rum. How did you know where I was? I typed back, anxious but also a little comforted. If she was a friend, I had someone on my side, and if not, at least this nightmare might end quickly. Your IP address, you really should invest in a VPN, she replied. What kind of cable TV is VPN? I asked. A long while later, with no response, I sent another message. Tilda, you still there? Yeah, sorry. I was going to write something sarcastic, then decided against it. Can we meet? I'm in the city. A chill ran down my neck. I thought for a moment, then sent Matilda the name of a restaurant and a meeting time for the morning. Friend or foe, I would face her soon. But first, I had to survive the night. I closed my laptop and prepared for a new ritual at dusk. The internet had many helpful resources on how to protect one's dwelling from otherworldly intrusion. The first step was salt. I went through every doorway and window in the apartment, laying a thin layer of salt on the ground to prevent entry. I even layered salt around closet doors and open rooms. Next was sage and incense. I splashed holy water on the windows. Dream catchers and crucifixes were hung on the walls. You could find almost anything in Baltimore if you knew where to look. It turned out there were 2 occult shops and an apothecary within running distance of my place during the day. Feeling as protected as a field of pinwheels in a storm, I retreated to the bedroom and drank until I fell asleep. For the past 2 days, I'd been plagued by migraines, a problem I'd never had before I got the new eyes. Not long after the headaches started, I also noticed strange, dry patches of skin on my arms and legs. They weren't just dry, but hard and cold to the touch, like something mixed between metal and crystal. Once, I vomited a handful of teeth, but after a frantic check, found none missing from my mouth. Something was changing inside me. Without a mirror to check, I couldn't be sure, but even my face felt different, sharper, younger. The night before meeting Matilda was the worst night I had ever experienced. A horrible stench filled the air around 10 p.m., a mix of cinnamon, dust, and the smell of a portable toilet at a summer music festival. My bed began to sway gently around midnight, then more violently. Less than a minute later, it stopped, and I snapped out of my fetal position. Cracks formed on the ceiling above my bed, opening and closing like gills. Hot, bitter wind blew down from the cracks, followed by a strong pulling sensation as the air was sucked back up. The holes narrowed and separated into a network of intertwined red lines. I saw faces in them, including my own terrified face, reflected back through mirrored eyes. I squeezed my eyes shut. Please stop. Please just go, I begged. Look, a voice screamed at me, its mouth so close I could feel its cold breath on my cheek. I didn't open my eyes. Eventually, I must have slept. Everything was very hazy. The next sensation I registered was a sound from outside the window. Someone was whistling. Finally, I opened my eyes and looked toward the source of the sound. My bedroom was back to normal. The window was covered by both blinds and curtains. The whistling sounded pleasant, friendly, a tune I didn't recognize. I felt a powerful curiosity to know who was making the sound. My hand was on the curtain before I snapped awake and stopped. I stood by the window for several minutes, unable to tear myself away. The whistling grew fainter and fainter. The whistler was gone. As night returned to quiet, or at least as quiet as it gets in Baltimore, I collapsed to the floor. I was breathing as if I'd just run sprints up a staircase. Somehow, I dragged myself to the corner of the room farthest from the window, then passed out. Pale yellow light filtered through the closed blinds, waking me. Reinforcements had arrived. I was safe. A long night had left me aching and cramped. I stood up, stretching my back, one hand bracing against the wall for balance. As I tried to turn the other way, I found my hand stuck to the wall. Not just stuck, but merged, indistinguishable where the wall began and my flesh ended. I struggled, pulling, stretching, trying to break free. I braced my feet against the wall to leverage myself, and my feet stuck too. Everywhere my skin touched, I was drawn into the surface. It pulled me in until I was completely submerged within the wall. The feeling of confinement almost made my mind explode. I was only held for a minute or less before I suddenly broke free, tumbling back into my bedroom. I only stopped long enough to grab my phone, keys, laptop, and wallet before leaving the apartment to wait for Matilda at the restaurant. I was still in my pajamas by then. I didn't care anymore. "Are you here?" she texted. I looked around from my seat after reading Tilda's message. The restaurant was almost empty, stuck between breakfast and lunch and not fancy enough for brunch. I was at a back table in a corner. I texted back, "I'm wearing a red flannel shirt." Before I could finish typing, a petite blonde woman zipped into the seat opposite me. She wore a patched, button-covered denim jacket and aviator sunglasses. I tried not to look at my reflection in the lenses. "I think that's you," she whispered. "I just wanted to check before I sat down uninvited." Hi Matilda, I'm Walt. My real name is..." I don't need to know, and you certainly won't know mine. No offense, but you look like someone stuffed 10 pounds of horse manure into a garbage bag. A little offensive, actually. Last night was pretty rough." Tilda nodded. "Sorry, I know the feeling. Have you heard from anyone else recently?" "No, not lately. The last one to contact was Cheshire about a week ago, and there've been some troubles." Matilda's lips pressed into a hard line. "Cheshire is causing trouble. Walt, there." "Ha, nice. What?" "Matilda and Walt and Matilda," she began to hum. "You don't understand, do you?" I shrugged. "Is this like a VPN thing?" Tilda just sighed and took a sip of her coffee. We sat in silence for a moment while she chewed on her lip. Suddenly, Matilda leaned forward. "Don't freak out," she said, removing her sunglasses. I recoiled in alarm. "Whoa, easy there," Matilda said, glancing around with her empty eye sockets to make sure no one noticed my yell. "Your eyes," I said. "Yeah, you don't have eyes," I stammered. "You're observant," she said. I focused on my breathing until I felt less like a rabbit that had swallowed a lit cherry bomb. "What happened?" I asked. Matilda put her sunglasses back on. "I clawed them out last week. Tried to give them back to whatever wanted them." "Oh, did it work?" "They took the eyes, but I still see the creatures. I still see everything. I think the eyes were like seeds. Does that make sense? They planted those damn eyes in our skulls and something took root. Other parts of me are changing. Last night I started floating for almost 10 seconds. Have you noticed anything strange?" "Yes," I quickly replied. "Is it bad?" she sighed. I drained the rest of my coffee. "You don't want to talk about it. Whatever's happening, I think it's just you and me left. Cheshire has been sending me cryptic emails, strange images, and everyone else has disappeared. I have a place to go and a plan, but I'm terrified to do it alone. Will you come with me?" I looked out the window. There was a hornet's nest, the size of a Ford Fiesta, hanging from the traffic light across the street. The nest was pink and wet. Hundreds of wings buzzed out of it, each the size of a seagull. "Sure," I said to Matilda. "I guess I'll come along." Matilda's plan involved an RV, a long road trip, and possibly an assassination, or maybe a persuasive interrogation, as she assured me. "You mean torture? Sounds like torture." Matilda grinned. "Only torture if Cheshire doesn't spill everything. Otherwise, we'll make it spill everything." This wasn't how I'd imagined my life would go when it all began, but at least now I didn't have to face this mess alone. I focused on the road, telling myself not to displease Matilda. We were driving west on the highway, heading towards California. West, where Cheshire was, and perhaps some answers. Around us, spring was awakening. Trees hung suspended between life and death. Cars zipped past us like fighter jets dodging dirigibles. Matilda's RV was a beat-up old Winnebago, patched up with wine-colored stripes on the side and a carpeted interior that was probably once white. The old machine rumbled as I pressed the accelerator. The engine seemed to take pressing the pedal as a suggestion, not a command. We struggled to maintain the speed limit. Matilda had her feet on the dashboard, the window open, a cup of coffee perpetually in her hand. She still wore her sunglasses, even though I'd promised her missing eyes didn't bother me. "You really think Cheshire will be that easy to find?" I asked. "We have their IP address, and I was born with a nose for sniffing things out like a bloodhound," Matilda said, sticking a small hand out the window to let her fingers glide through the wind. "Can't believe two idiots like you and them forgot to use a VPN or mask their signal. Sorry, I didn't realize I was living in an episode of Get Smart." "Get what?" she asked. "The man from U.N.C.L.E., I replied. "I don't understand any of the words you're saying in that order." "Are you saying Mission Impossible, you know?" I clarified. "Oh, that I know." We drove all day, taking turns at the wheel every 2 hours. When we needed a break, we pulled over. The RV had its own toilet, a kitchen, and even a shower. It was actually quite a comfortable way to travel. Twice a day, Matilda signaled an emergency stop. She'd rush out of the Winnebago, darting into the bushes by the highway. Then I'd hear the sound of retching. Matilda said she was fine, but she looked as pale as I did. Strange dry patches appeared on her skin, shiny like coins. Her neck was also reddened on both sides. The sun was setting, gradually painting the sky purple. As we began to look for a place to park for the night, we passed a major accident. Dozens of cars were entangled. Ambulances, fire trucks, and police cars swarmed, illuminating the evening with red and blue lights. A truck had crashed through the median and overturned in the grass. There must have been a terrible fire, as the vehicle was just a charred, twisted black frame. I saw paramedics lifting a covered stretcher into an ambulance, and standing above the entire scene was a stardusted shadow, almost as tall as the treetops. Galaxies spun around the creature's absolute darkness. Constellations drifted like leaves on a pond. The entity turned towards me and tilted its head curiously. I felt a deep, profound cold. There was a pulling sensation. "My God, look at the road!" I startled and looked back at the road. A horn blared. The RV had drifted into the next lane. Sorry, I said, correcting the steering. "What the hell was that, man?" Matilda asked. I thought I secretly glanced back at the accident, fading in the rearview mirror. No star shadow lingered over the wreckage. Nothing. A few hours after sunset, we stopped at a rest area. Matilda maneuvered the RV into an empty spot in the gravel lot under one of the few lampposts. Around us were a cluster of trees and a picnic table. Across the lot were restrooms and some vending machines. We bought some snacks, then went to bed. Matilda slept in the back room, and I on the pull-out sofa. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. Shadows from the outside lights filtered through the curtain gaps, forming long streaks across the kitchen. There was a small TV, but I didn't want to wake Matilda. I had just started to drift off when I heard whistling outside the Winnebago. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. The sound grew louder, peaking right at the window above my bed, then faded as the whistler passed us. I lay still, holding my breath until the whistling disappeared. I didn't sleep that night. On the second day of the trip, Matilda told me more about her plan. "When we get there, you'll hold Cheshire down while I land a few punches, just to let them know we're serious. Then we'll ask them about those cryptic emails and make them tell us everything about the eyes and the creatures." "What if they don't know any more than we do?" I asked, quickly swallowing a yawn. "Or what if beating them doesn't work?" Matilda cracked her knuckles. "Oh, beating always works." She gave me a chilling look, then stuck out her tongue. I winked and turned on the radio. It was a beautiful day, perfect for driving. The sun flooded the road. We turned on the heater to combat the morning chill, but there was already a hint of warmth in the wind, suggesting the cold was only temporary. I tried to focus on that rather than Matilda's troubling condition. Overnight, the red patches on her neck had turned yellowish purple. Thin scars ran parallel to each bruise. I also noticed Tilda was hiding her right hand, keeping it in her denim jacket pocket or out the window. Her condition was alarming, though I wasn't much better. I caught a glimpse of my face in the mirror. The metallic spots I'd seen before were fading, but now the veins on my neck and cheeks had darkened, becoming prominent. Small scratches appeared around my eyes, making me look like someone who had rolled around in thorn bushes. I felt dizzy, and my joints ached. As we stopped at a fast food joint for breakfast, I secretly prayed that we would find Cheshire and that they would have answers. Clouds began to roll in around midday. At first, fluffy white clouds, then quickly darkening, and the beautiful day I had anticipated turned grim. Rain lashed against the windshield faster than the old RV's wipers could keep up. We swayed and rattled with every gust of wind. After an hour, it was clear we were risking ourselves, so Tilda found an exit leading to a deserted shopping mall. We parked the RV and spent the rest of the day sitting on the cramped sofa, watching horror movies. I woke up after dark. The sound of rain pattering on the windows and the warmth of the Winnebago must have lulled me to sleep. I felt something pressing on my shoulder. It turned out Matilda had also fallen asleep, curled up. Outside, the world was ablaze with endless rows of fluorescent lights in the parking lot. Further beyond, the sky was pitch black, clouds obscuring every star. Matilda's sunglasses had slipped down as she slept. Even without eyes, her face was sharp, beautiful, and captivating. I tried to wake her, but she whimpered and held out her arm. It took me a moment to realize she wanted to be carried. When I understood, I smiled. I carried her into the bedroom, took off her shoes, tucked her in, then quietly went out, returned to the sofa, and closed the door. I was still smiling as I drifted off to sleep. The smell of smoke woke me instantly. My first thought was fire. Then I saw a figure sitting on the edge of the sofa, so close that my feet almost touched him. "You don't look so good," the smoker rasped. In the dim light, I saw him wearing a wrinkled, stained suit, his shirt unbuttoned and no tie. Still, that cloud of smoke hovered over his face, obscuring his features, but I thought I could make out the shape of a fedora through the hazy smoke. "Am I dreaming?" I asked. The smoker grabbed my foot. I yelped. He pulled my foot towards his face. I heard teeth chattering and began to struggle. The smoker released my foot and I scrambled up. "Do you feel it?" he asked. I stood there trembling, fists raised. "Yes." "Then you're not dreaming. Sit down." An invisible force slammed into my shoulder. I fell to the floor, then pulled myself into a sitting position. The smoker sighed, exhaling a plume of smoke. "I warned you about the eyes, offered to take them for you, but it's too late now. The seeds have been sown and you're about to bloom. Can you feel it?" My face tightened. I raised a hand to my cheek. The veins there were hard and cold as stone, taut beneath my skin. "What's happening?" I whispered. "The change, the usual," the smoker replied. Matilda screamed from the bedroom. I tried to stand but was again struck down by the invisible pressure. The smoker stood over me, then vanished, and I could move. I ran to the bedroom door. It was locked. Tilda screamed again, and I heard whispers. "Damn it, I'm sick of these games," I said. I kicked the door twice, enough to break the cheap lock. The room was dark and empty except for Matilda. She was huddled near the head of the bed, one hand raised to cover her face. "Tilda, where is it?" She slowly lowered her hand. "Gone, I think it was. There was a girl, her eyes, Walt, they were horrible. She bit me, she bit me." I could see a circle of blood just below Tilda's wrist. Small tooth marks were clearly visible. "Why?" Matilda asked. "What did we do to them? Where are they?" All I could do was shake my head. "Will you stay here tonight?" Hey, shut up, Walt, don't get any ideas. It's just, I'd feel better if you slept here, okay?" "Okay," I said. I climbed onto the bed, then immediately jumped off when Tilda asked me to turn on the light. Finally, when we were settled, Tilda took my hand and snuggled in. We stayed like that until the pigeons outside signaled dawn. Matilda was getting sick. She tried to hide it, but the further we drove, the clearer it became that she was slowly deteriorating. Small cracks constantly appeared on her skin. They were thin, like scratches, and beneath them something reflected light. The fingers on her right hand were slowly fusing together, and the lines on her neck had widened, turning crimson. Several times that week, I saw Tilda sit down, looking breathless or dizzy. I wasn't much better. Black veins had spread across my body, hardening so much I could feel them when I pressed on my arms or legs, like large steel cables running through muscle and bone. Rough gray membranes also began appearing all over me, and my limbs were so stiff in the mornings that sometimes Tilda had to pull me out of bed. We had started sleeping together in the RV's single room after the night we met the smoker and the girl with mirror eyes. So, all things considered, this trip wasn't entirely bad. This wasn't how I'd envisioned my life going when it all began, but at least now Matilda and I were hopefully closer to finding answers. "Do you want to stop and see the world's third largest ball of twine?" Tilda asked. She was in the passenger seat, feet on the dashboard, window open as usual. We were somewhere in the Midwest, more than halfway to California, with fields stretching around us, flat, green, and endless. The sky looked like it could birth a tornado at any moment, but there was no rain. I was driving, tapping my fingers to the song on the radio. In that moment, the monsters seemed distant, and Tilda, with her sunglasses and fleeting smile, felt incredibly close. I opened my mouth to reply, then felt my stomach clench like a startled armadillo. "Gotta stop," I mumbled, pulling the RV to the side of the road. Fortunately, we were the only vehicle on the two-lane stretch. I barely made it to the restroom before a stream of neon green fluid erupted from my mouth. "Are you okay?" Tilda called from the door. "Fine, I'm fine," I lied. But maybe we should save the ball of twine for the return trip. We continued driving throughout the afternoon. Matilda and I didn't talk about the strange things we saw on the road, but I sensed things were getting worse for her, and I knew it was happening to me too. A few nights, I looked up at the sky and saw alien stars in impossible shapes. Once, I woke up to what looked like the aurora borealis outside, except the bands of color were all red. Something massive swam through the light, a huge black silhouette, the size of an aircraft carrier, covered in dangling tentacles. One of them brushed over the top of the RV, making the vehicle shake. I pressed myself down onto the bed, holding my breath. Matilda stirred softly beside me but didn't wake up. Most of our encounters with the creatures were like that. Minor bumps, distant meetings, strange things observed from afar. Most entities ignored us. Perhaps they didn't even notice us. A few times, creatures came close, or at least followed us, often with too many eyes. I always sensed curiosity from those encounters, but only once did I feel true danger. The day after we skipped the ball of twine, Matilda and I were having lunch at a rest stop, discussing our attack plan for when we finally found Cheshire. "If you hold them down, I can punch them until they tell us how to reverse this mess," Tilda said. I nibbled on a sandwich that now had no taste for me. "I just feel like we should take a more subtle approach. You want me to hold Cheshire so you can punch them? We don't even know if Cheshire is male or female. We know nothing about them." "They might not even be human." Tilda cut an apple. "Stop! What if Cheshire is a cat, or like a hive mind of cats working together?" "I hope not." The rest of my sentence died on my lips. The picnic area was surrounded by fields, a green ditch separated by the highway on one side and a dense forest on the other. Standing right at the edge of the forest was a tall figure with a long, powerful neck. From that distance, at least 200 meters, it was hard to say for sure, but the creature seemed at least 3.5 meters tall. It stood still, facing us, its head drooping, turning its upper body into a question mark. Perhaps it couldn't even lift its own head. Something about this creature reminded me of the time I walked into my garage and heard a hiss. That was just a few months after I lost my sight. The world was dark, and every sound stood out. I didn't know what animal made that sound, but I backed out of the garage and slammed the door shut. There was danger in that sound, a curling sense of unease. I felt the same sensation looking at the tall figure at the edge of the field. "Get in the RV," I whispered to Matilda. She turned her head in the direction I pointed and froze when she saw the creature. Tilda even took off her sunglasses to get a better look with her empty eye sockets. Soft Head, the clever name I had come up with for the monster, began to stumble towards us through the tall grass. "RV," I yelled, jolting up. Matilda was right behind me, diving into the passenger seat. In a moment of panic, I couldn't find the keys. Soft Head was moving faster now, sprinting across the field, its head bobbing like a ball on a string. It was clumsy, but incredibly fast, too fast for a creature with such a gaunt frame. Then my brain kicked in, and I lowered the sun visor. The keys fell into my lap. Soft Head was almost halfway from the forest to the RV before I finally started the engine. We shot out of the parking lot so fast I worried the vehicle might tip, but then we were on the highway, accelerating, and I felt every muscle in my body slowly relax. Soft Head burst out from behind us, leaping onto the road. "Damn it, damn it, damn it," I said, stomping on the gas pedal. The monster looked ridiculous as it ran, its arms flailing and its neck wobbling, but my God, it was fast. We didn't truly outrun it until the old Winnebago was chugging along at 80 km/h. We drove in silence for a long time. "I think we should limit our stops," Matilda said. "Yeah," I replied. We reached the state border that night. As we were looking for an exit to stop at a rest area or parking lot, Matilda suddenly sat bolt upright. "Look," she said, pointing to a bend in the road ahead. "Do you see it?" I turned to where she pointed. I saw a tree taller than any building I'd ever seen, towering over the horizon. The sunset illuminated its silhouette from below, casting a long shadow over the forest. Blue lights hovered around its trunk, moving back and forth in wide circles. The sight was spectacular, beautiful, and seemed very deliberate, as if we were being called in that direction. "Tilda," I whispered, "should we get closer and see?" I wanted to. I really wanted to. There was something about the dancing lights and the scale of the tree that pulled me in. I felt drawn towards it. A car horn startled me. We had drifted into the other lane and were blocking a vehicle. I swerved back into our lane and hit the gas. "Maybe we'll check it out on the way back," I said. "Like the ball of twine." "But Walt," she said. No, we can't. Something's not right," I replied. "Oh, are you sure?" She frowned, worried. "Sure." "Okay." Tilda looked out the window towards the tree until it was completely dark. The darkness and distance obscured its form, but the blue lights were still visible for almost an hour. They hovered, beckoning us. We crossed the border into California just before midnight and decided to keep driving until we reached the coast. That's where Tilda hoped to find Cheshire. She was tracking their online activity, sitting at the small dining table in the RV with my laptop. Is this actually going to lead us straight to Cheshire's house? I called to the back. Like, right to their doorstep. No, the IP address only gives us a general area, but we might have to drive around the neighborhood for a few days to find signs. I saw Tilda in the rearview mirror, scratching her neck. The strange scars on her neck had started to bleed. She saw me looking. Her sunglasses hovered in the mirror for a moment, then she picked up the laptop and went into the bedroom. It didn't take us long to find Cheshire's house. Tilda directed me through a series of turns until we arrived at a sparsely populated neighborhood. This area was somewhere between the suburbs and the countryside. Houses were quite far apart, with large yards filled with rusty cars on blocks and feral cats. There was no mistaking which house was Cheshire's. A storm swirled over a single house at the end of the road. I slowly drove the RV closer, then parked a few houses away. There was something wrong with the storm. The gray clouds twitched and stumbled against a clear blue sky. Rain fell, and as I looked closely, I realized the rain wasn't actually falling. It was flying up from the ground like iron filings drawn by a magnet. An indigo lightning bolt also originated from the yard and crawled up into the sky. It moved slowly, like a striking snake in a flip book. The house was hard to see through the screen of rising rain, but it looked old, enormous, and yearning. Tilda and I sat in the RV, surrounded by a beautiful spring day, watching a small storm press down on the house. "Do we knock?" I asked. "Just say hello, or should we be sneaky and, stalk them?" Matilda didn't answer. I turned to see her staring at me, her sunglasses removed, her empty eye sockets fixed on mine. Her neck was bleeding again, pale red drops staining her collar. She breathed with a soft wheeze with each inhale. "I'm scared," she said. I reached out and squeezed her hand. Me too." It was a strange sensation, walking through the rain that rose from the ground. Matilda and I had argued about driving away and waiting until morning to confront Cheshire, but after about an hour, Tilda simply stood up and walked out of the RV. I followed. We quickly crossed the yard through the inverse storm. The water was ice cold and had the consistency of motor oil. Tilda hesitated when we reached the porch. This isn't how I imagined things would end when it all started. "At least we found Cheshire. Do we knock?" she asked, leaning against the wall to catch her breath. The wounds on her neck were bleeding again. "I can kick the door in," I lied. My legs were stiff, my muscles like jelly with cement flowing through my veins. The gentle rumble of thunder above us escalated into a roar. Another lightning bolt slowly rose from the ground, heading for the clouds. Matilda reached out and grasped the doorknob. "It's not locked. Screw it," she said, walking into the house. It was like walking into a drug-induced nightmare. Nothing in the house was straight. Floors slanted, walls were uneven. The few pieces of furniture I could see were mismatched, broken, and almost seemed hostile. The living room had 2 spiral staircases that vanished into the ceiling. On the wooden floor was a rug made of bear skin, but the bear's head had been replaced with a dirty blonde wig. I knelt to touch the hair and immediately recoiled my hand. That wasn't a wig. "We shouldn't be here," I said, turning towards the door. The door was gone, replaced by a dirty, blank wall. Matilda made a sound that was either a cough or a laugh. "Guess we have to keep going." We continued. Narrow corridors stretched far longer than they should have, filled with blind corners, abrupt turns, and sometimes ending in dead ends. Some hallways were dim, others so bright I had to squint and shield my eyes. They just kept winding. We must have been walking for over an hour. Tilda breathed with difficulty the whole way, gasping and stopping every few minutes. I wasn't much better. Each step felt like concrete blocks were tied to my feet. One of the hallways was lined with paintings. I tried not to look too closely at them. There were portraits with blurred faces, a landscape under a night sky with a single red star that looked like bleeding paint. Halfway down the corridor, Tilda stopped. "What is that?" Just as I was about to ask, I saw it. It was an oil painting of Tilda and me, nailed to the side of the RV, our limbs pinned to the metal. Both our faces were contorted with absolute ecstasy. We were laughing so hard our jaws had dropped to our chests. "Let's go a little faster, shall we?" Tilda said, turning me. I took a deep breath to calm myself, but made the mistake of looking at the painting again and felt my stomach clench. Matilda waited while I tried to compose myself. Finally, we reached a door. The doorknob was brass and warm to the touch. I noticed a low humming sound coming from beyond, almost a purr. "What if Cheshire is in there?" I asked. "I don't know, Walt. I don't know what to do anymore." Tilda reached for the handle. "Let's just let things happen." The room was vast, uncomfortably humid. Hot, stifling air hit our faces as we stepped into the dark space, just bright enough to make out vague shapes and forms. I fumbled for a light switch and was surprised to actually find one. Click asterisk. Light flooded the room. "Hello," a cheerful voice boomed. I think I screamed or Matilda screamed. Maybe both of us did. We had found Cheshire. They were as big as a bear, their skin bunched up like a deflated ball, both bloated and sagging. Their body was fused with the wall, flesh merging with wood in a bloody swirl. Each time they opened their mouth, a fat, black, flaccid tongue hung down to their navel. Cheshire was also completely naked. "You found me," they shrieked, jumping up and down, making their skin ripple. "Cheshire?" Tilda asked. The creature jumped again. "That's right, hello friends, hello Walt, hello Matilda, Walt and Matilda, why are you so late?" Their shriek made me instantly run towards the door, but of course the door was gone. I hated that house. I hated it terribly. "You two are the last ones," Cheshire said. "Why don't you sit down?" I looked around the large, empty room. There was only a bed as big as a swimming pool in the corner. The sheets were stained and covered in slime, which looked remarkably like Cheshire's skin. I sat on the floor. Tilda sat next to me. "Closer," Cheshire asked. We didn't move. "Fine then. You found me. I made it as easy as possible, but you still took a very long time. The others are all gone, both Calvin and Violet. I thought you'd go before them, but no, no, no." Calvin vanished in his smoke, and little Violet fell into the mirror. "She always liked you." Cheshire turned to Matilda. "You've seen them, haven't you? They visited you, but now they're all gone and you are the last ones left." "What's going to happen to us?" Tilda asked. "You will change, you will become." "Become what?" I asked. "What will we become?" Cheshire shrugged. At least I think they shrugged. The folds of flesh at their shoulders rolled like waves on a shore. "I don't know what you'll become, only that you will asterisk become something. The eyes are seeds, you see. Or rather, you see asterisk. And once the seed is sown, there's no telling what will grow, stretching higher and higher. And when you've changed, you'll have to leave here." "Why?" Tilda pressed. "And go where?" "I don't know either. The change will make this world unsuitable. The air will become poison. The sunlight will be heavy enough to break bones. But you're lucky. There are many other worlds, and there are many, many wormholes between this world and others." Cheshire laughed, their tongue so long it almost touched the ground. "There's a house with 100 doors that you can wander forever without ever exploring. There's a night with no stars where the forgotten crawl home. And a forest where demons dance and lost children plant trees. There's a place of hell where a cowardly king waits on his throne of glass. And amidst it all, there's a neighborhood on a slow, creeping hill, caught in a rift of reality. Oh, you can go to those places. And in time, perhaps you'll learn to come here. Learn to pass back and forth and how to find the desperate, how to feed your minds." "What you're saying makes no sense," Tilda said. "Why me? Why did you do this to me?" "Because you were there, because you needed something from us, because you accepted a gift, and now we are giving you more. Haven't you felt the call? The doors all have an appeal to those who can see them." I thought of the tall tree with the blue lights floating in the sky, how it pulled us in, and how much Tilda had wanted to see it. If we passed something similar again, could we stay? Tilda stood up. "Enough, I'm tired of listening to their rambling. They're going to tell me how to stop what's happening to me. I will. I'll make them hurt until they tell me. I'll make them really hurt. I promise." Cheshire smiled. Then they laughed and laughed, their mouth stretching until their face split in two. Something furry crawled out of the opening. It was a skull with a spinal column attached. All the bones were covered in thick black fur. "See you on the other side," the skull said in Cheshire's voice. It slithered down the pile of sagging flesh that had been their body, then shot across the floor too fast to follow. Tilda lunged, trying to grab Cheshire, who slipped through a crack between the wall and the floor. They vanished. "Jesus," I said. There was nothing else to say. Tilda punched the ground. "Damn it, you bastard." "You dog." Cheshire's flesh slowly dripped onto the floor, sliding off the wall like yogurt. It already smelled of rotten meat, for some reason, with a hint of strawberries. Behind the pile of flesh was a door. With no other choice, we went through and found ourselves standing outside Cheshire's house, on the porch. The storm had stopped, and the sky was a perfect April blue. "What now?" I asked. "Maybe we can track them, maybe we can." Tilda silently crossed the yard and headed towards the RV. After a moment, I followed. When I got inside, she was already in the bedroom and had closed the door. The door was locked. "Matilda," I called. She didn't answer. I heard her crying. I wondered what it was like to cry without eyes. Would tears still fall? I sat on the small sofa in the RV's kitchen and waited. 20 minutes later, Tilda emerged, calm and pale, sunglasses on her face. "Shall we go see the ball of twine?" she asked. "Okay," I said, getting up to start the RV. "Sounds like a great trip." We weren't in a hurry. We drove slowly, exploring random exits, stopping frequently to walk around. Both of us were slowly falling apart. Tilda's fingers and toes were slowly fusing together. Every day, I found clumps of her hair in the bathroom, along with her teeth. She was always bundled up, shivering even when it was hot, and constantly out of breath. My veins continued to darken, hardening and pressing against my skin, which was now rough as bark. But it wasn't all bad. We still had good times, even then. Sleeping until noon, staying awake until dawn, always together. Each day, we saw more strange creatures. Vultures with antlers and human eyes, clouds that dragged their tails as they passed over the ground. And we saw the doors, or more often, I think we felt them. Cheshire was right. They called to us, pulled us. Tilda felt them more strongly than I did. One night, as we were driving past a hospital, Matilda grabbed the steering wheel, trying to drive into the parking lot. I wrestled the wheel back and hit the gas. Only when the building was out of sight did Tilda calm down. "I hurt so much," she said, curling up in the passenger seat. "I don't think we can stay here, but I'm afraid to leave." "We'll be okay," I lied. "We'll find a way to fix everything." Last night, we slept at a rest stop near a forest. When I woke up in the morning, Matilda was gone. I easily followed her tracks, bloody footprints leading into the woods. Soon enough, I came across her clothes, her hair, and all her fingernails and toenails. That horrifying journey led me to the edge of a small, still lake. The water was icy cold and reflected my own decaying image. In that moment, I felt the pull. The lake was a door, a place where the boundaries of reality were torn, an entrance to another world. I suspected the lake wasn't deep, but I felt like I was standing on the edge of a terrible abyss. If I stepped into the water, I knew I would sink until the light vanished, then sink even deeper. I wondered what awaited on the other side. What kinds of things could live in that darkness and pressure? And most of all, I wondered if I would ever see Matilda again. There was another pull, too strong, an undertow trying to drag me down. I panicked and stumbled, scrambling away from the lake as fast as I could. That door was not the door for me. I had driven far from the rest stop, but even a short distance away, I could feel other doors calling me. If I stayed here too long, I knew I would die. But if I left, I might never be able to come back. And who knew where I would step when I passed through the doors that whispered to me, promising, pleading, and threatening. There were endless fields, alien stars, deep pits, eyes, and hungry things waiting. I wouldn't be able to resist much longer, and I feared this sense of inevitability. But I was determined to see that giant ball of twine, even if it was the last thing I did. I just wish I didn't have to do it alone. I'm so tired. I miss Matilda.